Well, hello friends, welcome back. It is Thursday, January 19th. We are 35 days away from Princess. This is my first run since Dopey. It's about 10 days after. I wanted to take at least a week off, so that was partly intentional. Probably will run again tomorrow. Just kind of easy getting things back into the swing of things as we gear up for Princess. And then of course springtime after that. So just, that kind of thing. But this will kind of be the precursor to my marathon weekend recap video that I'm going to do after. And then we'll get into some more running content. Already working on costumes for Princess, all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll see what's all coming soon. Have some other things in the works, hopefully. We'll see. But that's going to do it for now. We'll check in with you maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. It's always a crapshoot. So.
3, 2, 1, go!
Hello friends, I am back with I wanted to go over do a recap of Marathon Weekend, my musings and my experiences from my now 9th Walt Disney World Marathon Weekend. So let's dive right into it. I first arrived on Tuesday night before the expo. Got in pretty late. I stayed that night at Wilderness Lodge for just one night, and nothing too eventful about that. The whole premise was obviously getting up. I did this prior to them announcing the virtual queue for the expo, and little did we know there would be a virtual queue when I booked that, but it still worked out really well, because if I didn't and came in like I had normally in the past on Wednesday, I obviously wouldn't have been able to join the virtual queue at the time I did, so that was good. But so in the morning when I did join the virtual queue, I was on right away, like a lot of people. Ended up with group 23, I believe I had 23, 24, something like that. I don't know, right around there. And I forget exactly what I want to say I was called just before 11. I want to say like between 10:30 and 11. And I was up. You could already see on social media and different things that it was pretty crazy. I had gotten to the expo right around 9:15, 9:20. I took an Uber instead of taking the bus just to make sure I got there a little bit ahead of time. And it was already pretty crazy at that time. So I was kind of glad I got there early. But at the same time, you could tell it was going to be a chaotic day. And I think a large part of this recap is going to be me talking about the expo, because in my now 9 years doing this weekend, it was one of the craziest expos I had ever seen. I had the only thing that would be relatively close to me is 2018, when it was the 5th anniversary of Dopey and the 25th marathon. I waited roughly 2 hours in the merchandise line to get into that one. And that was before the arena was built, so you were still doing merch in the I think was the HP Fieldhouse or whatever, one of those buildings. And that was insane too. But what really got me was the bib line, and that there was a line to get into the general expo. And I think a large part of that is due to people not, having to wait for their virtual queue to get into the merchandise. So people come still early like they were planning on, but then they have to wait around to get to their queue slot. So I guess, there's positives and negatives to both ways of doing this. I'm still not a huge fan of the virtual queue. I mean, it's fine for what it is. But as someone who, I guess, plans on getting there early and doing all the things anyways, it doesn't really, I don't know. I did, and I spent a lot of time at the expo, not only because, of the stuff you have to do at the expo, but just, seeing friends, seeing different people I've met over the years from this weekend. That's kind of what this day is all about. I didn't really plan anything. Originally, I had planned to maybe go, depending on timing, go over to Universal for a few hours. That didn't end up happening given the amount of time I did spend at the expo, but that's whatever. So overall, talking specifically now about the merchandise, I showed in my expo video what I got. I'll link to that above, but I thought too, part of the big thing about the merchandise portion was there was a lot of stuff just everywhere. I mean, just clothes and items just all over the place. It was a mess. It was chaos. I don't really recall that previously, maybe a little bit, but I just felt like people were just grabbing everything, and then it was just ending up everywhere when they decided, I don't want this anymore, or that doesn't fit, or whatever. It was just a mess. So I guess there's nothing really that I guess could be done to kind of curb that, other than, people being better people, but it is what it is there, I guess. Outside of that, the kind of going back to the rest of the expo, I didn't even go into the main expo. I just wasn't going to wait in a line for that. I think one of the highlight, I guess not really, it wasn't really a highlight of the expo, but of the weekend, I love I love doing these anniversary years especially, but I love when they give you the things that kind of commemorate that. And I did show this in one of my other videos too, but the poster was a really cool gift for those doing the marathon. And of course, if you did Dopey, you got the luggage tag, which was kind of the opposite last time, which we didn't really get a Dopey gift for the 5th Dopey, if I'm remembering correctly, but we did get a 25th luggage tag, which was nice. But other than that, I guess that's the expo. I kind of leave it at that. After the expo, I did head over to Animal Kingdom Lodge. That is where I would be spending the rest of the week. This is my first time staying, not my first time staying there, but first time staying there for a race weekend. And honestly, it was great. I would stay there for a race weekend in a heartbeat. Again, I thought it's, away from the hustle and bustle of the parks, but the rooms are great. The on-site amenities are great, whether it's the pool or the restaurants and stuff. I think there's obviously advantages to the other resorts. I do love the Epcot area resorts for a race weekend as well. But I think I would definitely consider Animal Kingdom Lodge again for a race weekend. So, I mean, if that's something you are looking for, consider that. And a shameless plug, but I am a travel agent, so can always help you book that next runDisney vacation. But moving on, let's go into the 5K. Now, the 5K was basic. There was nothing crazy about or different about the 5K. one kind of overall, I guess, theme or occurrence for this weekend was the pre and post race characters were not the ones you'd normally see in previous years at Marathon Weekend. So typically, Marathon Weekend, you'd have whatever the character was for the race theme. So like, for 5K, Pluto is the race character. So Pluto would be out pre and post race. And then generally like Mickey or Minnie or Daisy, Donald, Goofy, and Dopey usually was, some combination of those were out morning, before the race and then after the race. This year, they didn't do that for any of the races, which kind of, I think, was... I like seeing different characters out there, but at the same time, it's like when it came to, getting ahead of myself, but when it came to Marathon Day and you don't have Mickey or Dopey, out, especially after the race, to, take your photos with them, I think that's kind of a disappointment in my eyes. I think that's a big, lots of people love to get, especially when those characters are on the medal, especially Dopey, there's really only one spot at Walt Disney World you can meet him, and that's Artist Point at Wilderness Lodge for dinner. It's really the only spot you can see him. So, not being able to see him is kind of a disappointment. Now, again, getting ahead of myself, he was on course, but still, you don't have your medal at that point, that kind of thing. So I don't know, just an observation. I get that they were going for a 90s theme all weekend. At times it was kind of overboard. I think they played the same 5 songs every day constantly, and it was like, okay, there was more than 5 songs to the 90s, but whatever. This day I did, obviously post this in my race highlights, but I did dress up as a trumpeter from Spectrum Magic, which was sort of 90s adjacent, 90s theme-ish. That parade was at Walt Disney World during parts of the 90s. And then, sadly it's no longer. But one of my, I would say, to me, I like Spectrum Magic more than Main Street Electrical Parade, but that's just me. As for characters at the 5K, you had Tarzan and Mala or Turk. The two, those two were kind of alternating, but Tarzan was always out with one of them. Mushu, Genie, and Abu, Max, just regular Max, not Powerline Max, which I guess was another kind of disappointment. Powerline Max was at Wine and Dine, and then they went all 90s for this weekend, but Powerline Max was never out for this weekend. So that was kind of, I didn't understand that. So you went all 90s, but then you kind of didn't do that. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But anyways, and then Chippendale Rescue Rangers version were out. I stopped for just the two. The lines are pretty long, which they typically are for a 5K. It's untimed. You get a lot of families, stuff like that. So they're not big, I guess, or I shouldn't say they're not. I don't go character heavy on 5Ks just because I don't like waiting that long. But obviously got to, after the race, hung out, obviously had some post-race refreshments with friends. And then I went over to Animal Kingdom, ate at Tusker House. Not a whole lot to that day. This trip was very, I guess, in terms of parks, low key. I really didn't do a lot of attractions, rides, stuff like that. So I mean, when you're, have 4 days in a row of running and getting up at 2 a.m., it kind of takes away from the park time. But either way, so there is the Pluto medal. He does move kind of side to side there. It does say I did it on the back, which I have been kind of against this whole time. I don't know why they do that. Not a fan of that concept. Thankfully, it doesn't appear that that will be on the princess medals, but whatever. In terms of race numbers, we don't get official numbers on the 5Ks. Typically, you can kind of assume they're similar in size to the 10Ks, which 10K this year had roughly 12,000 runners in total. So you can assume roughly 12,000-ish, give or take, for the 5K as well. Nothing, I mean, like I said, general same course as normal for the 5K. Nothing too crazy. So then moving on to the 10K, we'll start off with the numbers for those. Like I said, roughly 12,000, 11,871 finishers. So that means there should have been more starters than that, or people that either did not finish or did not even, show up and take on the race. That is up about 1,300 from the previous year. We had about 10,500 in 2022. So the races are definitely, increased this year, which I think you saw overall throughout this whole weekend is definitely more people, but still not that peak number in 2018 when we saw 20,000+ for the half and full. That didn't happen this weekend, but there's definitely more than 2022. Characters for the 10K, you had Hercules, Princess Ada, Scrooge, Rafiki, Goofy, Mickey and Minnie, Toy Story, Lumiere, Geppetto, Daisy, and Darkwing Duck. I had stopped for Ada, Goofy, Mickey and Minnie, Geppetto, and Darkwing Duck. Mickey and Minnie was about a 20-minute wait, at least when they were at the boardwalk. And at least, like I said, when I went through there, that was about a 20-minute wait. We did wait for it, kind of give or take. They were in their 90th birthday outfits. And then the other one, Darkwing Duck, was also a pretty long wait, about 20 minutes as well. So got that one. Course-wise, this was very similar to the I think last time we ran this was maybe 2019. So around then, there was this 10K course is pretty similar to that. You go in Epcot, out of Epcot, through the Crescent Lake Resort area, and then back into Epcot and finish that way. Whereas in 2022, we did two parks. We went Epcot to Hollywood Studios and back, essentially. I think I prefer this one that we did this year. Just feels like there's less road time. Now there is a good 1.5 to 2 miles to start that you're on the road. But I feel like with the two park version, you feel like you're on the road more so than you are here. So it's all personal preference when it comes to that. But otherwise, let me find the 10K medal. Chip and Dale this time. This one has been kind of when it first started, the 10K was Minnie Mouse themed. Then they moved Minnie to the full and they made it Oswald themed. And then they've kind of played with this one, and now it's Chip and Dale. So got that. And then the acorn does move. It does also again say I did it on the back. Not a huge fan, but whatever. And of course, as you can see, all very bright neon-ish colors for these medals, sticking with that 90s theme. Moving on to I should mention, I did go to Hollywood Studios that day. Did not ride a single ride at Hollywood Studios that day. Given how close the weekend was to the Christmas, New Year's holidays, a lot of people were still vacationing off, that kind of thing for that. And so parks are pretty crowded, especially earlier on in the week. And it just was like, I come here right now I don't need to wait, an hour plus for a ride. So I didn't. So that we did, I was with some friends that day. I went to Oga's, we went to Brown Derby, just kind of hung around and did things that way. So yeah. Moving on, then back onto the half. This was, we'll start with numbers. The finisher number is 15,343. Supposedly, in terms of bib numbers, those were kind of posted ahead of time, and they were supposedly around 18,000-ish bib numbers allotted for this race. So that can give you an idea. I don't know if there was quite 3,000 that didn't, finish or show up. Probably less than that, but it gives you an idea of what the size we're dealing with now is. Which I think Disney is really, this is kind of going to be their sweet spot for this weekend. I don't think they're going to go necessarily back up to those 20,000 plus numbers because of course crowding complaints. I think, and even with this race, there was still a lot of that, and so I think they don't want to continue to push that and make that even worse than it already is. But in terms of characters, we had Esmeralda, Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas, Lumiere, Beast, Jack Skellington, Buzz, the Tweedles, Mickey, Chip, Dale, and Pluto together, Kerchak from Tarzan, Tink and Periwinkle, Ariel, Hades, Jafar, Genie, Mushu, Lotso, and Miko. Of those, I stopped for Beast, Jack, Chip, Dale, and Pluto, Tink and Periwinkle, Ariel, Jafar, Lotso, and Miko. One thing I ran with a bunch of people this day, and one thing we tend to skip at least the first one or two characters because those are really where a lot of people tend to stop, and those lines are longer. As you get further into the race and people start to spread out, lines typically shorten up. So that's why we didn't stop till Beast. That was the fourth character in. Outside of that, we were in line for the Tweedles, but all of a sudden I look and the teacups are running and there are people on them. In my now, I think this is 10, 12, I don't even know how many Disney halves I've done. I have never seen the teacups or any ride during the half running. So we jumped out of line for them and jumped in line for the teacups. And we got pretty lucky there because I believe roughly 5-10 minutes after we were done with that, they had shut that down. The carousel also ran for a short period of time before that was shut down. So I know, talking with some people, they were kind of shut out from that because they, by the time they got there, they weren't running, or if they were, ahead of us, they may have not, gotten on, that kind of thing. So that was interesting to kind of have the teacups running. I was at first I wasn't sure how, obviously the spinning, how that would go with a half marathon. I don't know if I would do it with the full, but it was okay for a half, since you're at about mile 5 to 6 ish in the Magic Kingdom. Outside of that, if you have run a lot of these races, you often will probably see the Orange County Sheriff, who is always typically wearing a medal. To this day, he was wearing his marathon medal, I believe. Got a photo with him. I've gotten several photos with him. That's always fun. Then after the race, again, post-race refreshments, took photos with Jogging Jack, who is a Run Disney celebrity, essentially. It's amazing to see how he can stay in character from, when he gets there to post-race, throughout the whole race. So it's pretty incredible. That was the half. After the half, I did hang out at Epcot for a bit. I did Guardians. I don't remember doing a whole lot else. I don't think. I think Guardians is the only ride I did. Just kind of like I said, the nature of the weekend. Ate at Il Molino that night at the Swan. That's kind of a marathon weekend tradition, pre-marathon, to eat there. It's really good food. Service can be kind of hit or miss at times, so just kind of keep that in mind. So there's that. But there is the medal. Donald and Daisy do move side to side like that, and then of course I did it on the back. One thing I haven't mentioned, but I do believe I mentioned in my expo video, the weekend, I am wearing the half shirt right now, but the weekend shirts typically for this weekend have always had the park icons that you run through, when you do the race, which park you ran through for that race on the sleeve. And I want to say they may not have had them last year either, but I kind of don't like that they don't do that anymore, because that was always kind of like the 5K, you just had the, Spaceship Earth on the sleeve. 10K, typically just Spaceship Earth as well. Then you had Spaceship Earth and the castle. And then for the full, you had all 4 park icons on the sleeve. So that was always I always kind of liked that. It was the only race weekend Disney did that they did do that. And now that they kind of don't do it at all, it's kind of, they just the changes you notice from year to year after doing these races for so long. But whatever. Anyways, moving on to the marathon. This one had 12,690 finishers. Again, who knows how many exactly were slated to start. I would assume maybe roughly around between 14 and 15,000. But yeah, so that's an increase of about 1,400 from the previous year. So again, you see the bump up from 2022. We saw some similar bumps in races from Wine and Dine 2021 to Wine and Dine 2022. I'm sure there will be very similar ones for Princess from 2022 to 2023 and so on. So just something to note there. And then kind of jumping into Goofy and Dopey numbers. Now, the Goofy number does include Dopey's because as a Dopey, you do technically run Goofy too. So for Goofy, there was 7,446 runners. That's an increase of 1,700 from the previous year. Now, standalone Goofies, I believe it's roughly around 900 to 1,000, somewhere in that range. So Goofy as a standalone challenge is pretty small, and that's pretty typical, at least since Dopey started. You don't see a lot of people doing Goofy as a standalone, and they don't really intentionally sell a lot of Goofy as a standalone anymore either. I think if Goofy, if it wasn't for the Perfects and if it wasn't for Goofy being part of Dopey, Goofy probably would not exist anymore. If they had a way to do that, get away, I think they would just stick with Dopey. But that's just kind of my personal thoughts on that. And then in terms of just Dopey, 6,685 finishers for that. That was an increase of about 1,900. And from what I understand, there were roughly 8,000 plus-ish bibs allotted for that. So that I don't know if that necessarily means 1,000 plus didn't finish or didn't start. That's just kind of, we don't get those official numbers, so that's just kind of what we have to go off of. Just something to keep in mind is there as well. Moving on to characters, you had Cruella, Winnie the Pooh mix. So it was like I think Pooh, Tigger, Piglet, and Roo. It was a mix of there was 3 or 4 characters there. Belle, a Green Army soldier. I believe this one was a woman. I don't recall correctly. Sometimes it varies race to race whether it's a woman or man soldier for that. Sebastian, Pain and Panic, Hades, Pocahontas, Miko, Oogie Boogie, Flick and Anna, Beast Pluto, Jack Sparrow, Monty, or Fat Cat, those two were switching out. Chip and Dale, Dopey, Daisy, Goofy and Max, Mushu, Rafiki, Timon, Jesse and Buzz, Woody and Bo Peep, Donald, Launchpad, Darkwing, Scrooge, Genie, Abu, Jafar, the old retired attraction vehicles, which have been out basically every year since 2018 now, and then, of course, the animals that are outside of Animal Kingdom when you're just entering there. That is another kind of stop. A lot of people take a picture with the animals. Now, one thing I've noticed kind of since the return to Run Disney since COVID is they've been doing a lot more pairs of characters. So you'll see like Flick and Ada together, or Woody and Bo Peep together, instead of just one singular character out there. They obviously still have singular characters out there, but just something I've kind of noticed. They've been doing a lot more pairs of characters, it feels like. So I stopped for Belle, Pain and Panic, Hades, Oogie Boogie, which that was the longest wait of the race, of this race. Maybe 15-20 minutes there as well. But that's a popular one that you don't see out often. I believe it was last out for Wine and Dine 2021, which was villains themed. And then prior to that, I had not seen him since the 2016 half for this weekend. So this is really the only third time he's ever been out. So there's that. Stuff for Jack Sparrow, Monty, Dopey. Dopey was another longish line, but that was probably maybe only 10-ish minutes. He was just outside after leaving Magic Kingdom across from like the Poly and Shades of Green, that area, when you're on like what everybody considers Cone Alley. Then stop for Timon, Woody and Bo Peep, Donald, Launchpad, Scrooge, and that was it. For this, so our goal, I ran with one friend, and our goal was essentially to get to Everest. So we kind of didn't load a lot of character stops in the front. Oogie Boogie was around, I want to say mile 6 or so. And that was ones we just, because the character lists had leaked prior to the races. And he was on there, so that was one we said if he's truly out there, that's one we're going to stop for sure. And so we did. But then we didn't release, we didn't stop for many until we got to Animal Kingdom to kind of, we wanted to really game plan to get to Animal Kingdom to ride Everest, which we did. I'm going to mention that they did let runners through the single rider line, and they did run runner full trains every other. Now, that's not something they always do. This is my, I want to say, 3rd or 4th time riding Everest during the marathon. And this is, I think, the first time I've seen them do that. It's very hit or miss on whether they kind of give runners access, essentially. Sometimes they're very kind of stingy with that, and they won't, encourage runners riding things. For this, thankfully, they did. And then after we rode Everest, got in line, got a beer, and walked for a little bit to finish that. And then we after that, it was kind of like we're coasting in, so we stopped for more characters. I'm not a Tower of Terror fan, even outside of a race, so, hate me if you must, but I'm not a drop ride kind of person. But that one, we were passing by, and it was open, and they were allowing runners through the lightning lane entrance, so that was interesting as well. So just, another note, they don't always do those things, but it was kind of cool to see that they were. Then outside that, we had friends stationed who were not running the marathon in Epcot for margaritas, so grabbed our margarita as we hit Mexico, and then walked it into the finish basically because my goal was then to carry that across the finish line, which I have done in the past. So it's a lot of fun to do that. The marathon, itself, there's nothing to me. This is my sixth Disney marathon, sixth Dopey. The marathons are hard. It's not. I was starting to feel some tightness, cramping, whatever in my quad area about just after Animal Kingdom. So mile 18, 19-ish in there. I don't know. So that kind of slowed me down a little bit. But we were pretty much cruising that first good half of the race, doing 9:30-ish to 10-minute miles. But outside of that, there's nothing like running through all four parks. Just something to me, it's kind of sad that this is the only race now we can run through Animal Kingdom. That's one of my favorite places to run, and but obviously still glad we get to do it here. The slog between Animal Kingdom to Hollywood Studios, which includes the Blizzard Beach parking lot, that's not fun. Not a fan of that one, but again, whatever, you kind of deal with it. Given that the temperatures were better this year, it didn't feel as bad as it has in the past, but it's still just all those highway miles are not a whole lot of fun. But other than that, medals start with the marathon medal here. This spins, and it does say I did it on the top, so there's nothing on the back. Now, one thing it is kind of interesting that they've gone away from, because they've been doing a lot of double-sided medals recently, but they used to have like name, time, date. So you could engrave the medals on the back, and now they don't do that. They don't put a spot on there for that, which I find, I don't know if that's, I guess maybe a lot of people don't engrave Disney medals, but just, something of note too. They used to do that and kind of gotten away from that. Then you got Goofy, which is this, and then this spins, so you can kind of see from the front side of that, and then on the back, you can see all the characters too, and then it says I did it on the back. So that is the Goofy medal. And then, of course, Dopey, and there's that, and then this spins around, and then it says I did it on the back as well. So those are the medals for the weekend. Outside of that, last year I had fallen asleep and completely missed my dining reservation post-race. Now I did book Artist Point, but it was an $8.50 reservation because that's all I could get. And based on how I was feeling, not feeling bad in terms of being hurt or anything, but just exhaustion and being tired, that just wasn't going to happen. So about midday, I wouldn't, because I was still at the marathon midday, but in the early to late afternoon, I did cancel that. So I just knew I wasn't going to make that. And to me, that food, I like the food there, but it's not my favorite kind of food, so it wasn't something I was really looking forward to outside of getting that, the Dopey photo. So I didn't get that, but such is life. Did go to Magic Kingdom. I walked around for a little bit, took medal photos, of course, and then some friends invited me up to the top of the world, up above Bay Lake Tower for fireworks, so did that, and that was that. Moving on to Monday. Now, Monday, we have a big group. Every year, our tradition is Monday is, kind of our Marathon Monday celebration kind of thing. And we drink around the world at Epcot. It's a lot of fun. Group kind of varies in size, but it's usually at least probably 15 plus people. So it's a good thing. We do a lot of sharing. We do a lot of, so we're not always getting full drinks everywhere we go. But we also had lunch at Via Napoli. We had the big center table. We had, I don't even know how many of us. The whole table was full. So that was fun. We have some traditions. We do limoncello shots in Italy. So we had 20 of us doing limoncello shots. So we did, and then we always kind of, now, obviously a lot of people either start, the argument is, do you start in Canada or Mexico? Well, we kind of screw with that a little bit, and we start in Canada but go the other way then we go to Mexico, because our thing is to end with Irish car bombs in the UK. That's kind of our nightcap, and so that's a lot of fun. And this year, kind of to top it all off, we did Irish car bombs with Carissa Galloway, who is runDisney race announcer, and Brittany Charbonneau, who is a professional runner who won all 4 races last year doing Dopey. This year she did not run, but she was there to cheer. She was there during the half and full marathons, cheering. So that was a lot of fun. We did car bombs with them inside Rose and Crown. Ended the night with fireworks, and then we rode Soarin' and Test Track. Nobody threw up on Test Track, thankfully, but still a lot of fun. Tuesday, went to Animal Kingdom. I did Flight of Passage, rope drop that, did safari, did Up Close with Rhinos, which is my second time doing this tour, but it's a great, if you love behind the scenes, you love animals, this is a great stop, or great option to do. It is only once a day. It does book up pretty quickly. With my annual pass discount, it was $38, so not expensive either. So did that, rode Everest, hung out at Nomad Lounge for a bit, went back, went to Sanaa, ate in the lounge, just did bread service, and then it was time to head to the airport and go home. So that was, the weekend. This is it's not really a weekend, so it's a week, but it's the people, it's the atmosphere, the camaraderie between all the runners that keep me coming back year in year. I will never say no to Marathon Weekend. I'll probably never say no as long as I can to Dopey. So that's why when the Disneyland race announcement came out, that kind of threw me for a loop, but I'm going to do my best to try to do Dopey to Disneyland. So we'll see how that works. We'll also see, how time off works for that. But that is my plan as of now, to once again Dopey and Disneyland next year. Now I did pose some questions on Instagram. I did want to just kind of go over some of the things people kind of were asking or interested in. Must-haves race morning. This kind of can vary to person. I'm not a big eats before I run kind of person, so I don't usually bring much in terms of food, but obviously watch the weather. If it's going to be cold, you probably want those throwaways. The only day I used throwaways was half marathon morning. I did use a Mylar marathon morning because it was chilly that morning as well, but I didn't have any throwaways that day. So just kind of gauge on what you typically do before a race, because you're sitting there for a long time before the race actually starts. So if you're someone that's going to need to eat something, obviously bring something, that kind of thing. I touched on, because people were asking about the pre and post race characters. I did touch on that, so there was that. Like I mentioned, in terms of race numbers, we don't get the number of people who start races, but we only get the number who finish. So we kind of can go off how many bib numbers there technically were, but that's not essentially an accurate representation either. So just, kind of to compare the two. People were kind of asked, because I've compiled a list of every race except for Star Wars, because now that doesn't exist anymore, so I didn't go back and do those, but every other race since 2018 to now 23, characters that are out. But just for this weekend alone, these are kind of the characters that are out multiple times. Mushu was out 3 times. Chip and Dale were out 3 times, and then Genie was out 3 times during this race weekend. You had Turk, Darkwing, Lumiere, Mickey, Jesse, Jafar, Pluto, Ada, Rafiki, Hades, and Beast were all out twice. So those were kind of the repeats of the weekend that you could see. Outside of that, people ask, does Disney typically publish characters ahead of time? No, they do not. Just so happened that we kind of got that leaked ahead of time through some Facebook groups and stuff like that. That's not normal. Doesn't always happen. So just keep that in mind. The characters are typically a surprise. Outside of that, advice going from princess or from Dopey to princess. I don't really have much in terms of advice because I've never done it, but I have done, in 2020, I did Dopey to Rock and Roll New Orleans, which is just, so I did that. I did a 5K and half there, and it's kind of was just a coasting into that. Wasn't planning on running New Orleans for time, so it was just kind of maintaining the training between Dopey and that. Typically I do take a good week, maybe longer off. This year I took 10 days, ran yesterday, just an easy 5K, and then I'll start building up now towards Princess, because we've got a good, just over a month away from that now. So obviously got to get some training in before that. It takes a good few weeks before you really start to lose that training base that you have. But outside of that, I think that's going to do it for this recap. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope if you ran, congratulations. If you're planning on running next year, go for it. There's truly nothing like marathon weekend to me. It's just a lot. It's just fun. It's a whole, I don't know, it's hard to explain until you really get into it, get involved with this community, build the friendships, and it's a whole thing. And I as long as I can, I'm going to be doing marathon weekend. So that is that. Like I said, we'll see you next time.